Hello, Actuarial students. It's James from theinfiniteactuary.com here to tell you what's new in TIA Study version 3.0. We get a major bump here from 2.2 to 3.0, and for good reason, because we're introducing Discuss. That's right. Now your discussion where you're interacting with your instructor, asking questions, is no longer that old PHP forum. Discussion is going to be built directly into TIA Study, which is going to make asking questions on your mobile device a whole lot better, but also even on the web and tablets, iOS devices, Android devices. That's the great thing about TIA Study. It works wonderful everywhere. And I think you're going to enjoy Discuss, which is really the only new thing for TIA version 3.0, but it is a big one. So let's go ahead and jump in now and take a look at those new features. Okay, here we are in TIA Study, and I've selected Discuss, and we see there are three main ways to view threads. We have Browse, which is kind of what you did in the Legacy forum. You drill down to a specific lesson and you see the list of threads there. We'll look at that in a second. Then there's Following. We're not currently following any threads, but we'll change that in just a second. And finally, we have All, which is going to list all the threads for your exam with the thread with the most recent activity first. So if you scroll down to the end of the list, the list will refresh and it'll grab you more threads, and you can scroll for a long time because there's a lot of threads in each given exam. But let's go back to Browse and let's just drill down to a specific lesson. I don't know. Let's go to B, Annuities, B1, B1-4, and let's select, here we go, this first one, Slide 8. So once we've selected it, we see the thread on the right-hand side, and we can add a reply to this thread, and Markdown is supported. So I can say, follow up question, and I'm going to just add some LaTex x equals 5. And notice by default, we're following this thread. So if I click submit, we'll see that in our following tab, we now have slide 8 as one of the threads that we're following, which means if we sign out of the app and come back in, so if I sign out, sign back in again, and go back to Discuss, I'll still have that as a thread that I'm following. So I go to following, that thread is still sitting there. But I don't have to come back to following to check when new posts are made to threads that I'm following. I'll actually get a notification for that. So let's actually just go somewhere else in the app. Like let's say I'm on practice, I'm working a practice problem, and then the instructor answers my follow-up question. So I'm going to come up here to my second monitor, and I'm going to, as the instructor, I'm going to say the answer is X, and I'll hit submit. And we should see down here on our view, we get a little notification over here in the notifications tab. So if I just click on that, in my inbox, we see slide 8, James W. replied. And if I click on that, I get the thread right here inside of notifications. And if I scroll down, I'll see that he said, he being me, the answer is X. And now that I've read this, I can just archive this notification and I'm good to go. Now I'm still following that thread. So if I come over to here and I see my list of following threads, I'm still following it. So any other replies are going to also create a new notification for me. But we can unfollow threads if we want to. So if we select the thread and then click unfollow, then we're now no longer following that thread. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another reply up here as the instructor and hit submit. And we'll see that we get a notification that new posts have been added because we have this thread open. So if we click this to reload, we'll see, and we scroll down to the bottom, we'll see that another reply was added, but we didn't receive a notification for this because when that reply was added, we weren't following the thread. So let's go back to Discuss, and that's the idea of following. And you'll want to follow any threads that you're interested in being notified for. So you can just browse if you're just searching for things. And for instance, you find a thread that you want to be notified about, you can just hit follow. When you reply to a thread, as I said, you follow by default. When you create a thread, you also follow by default. So let's actually create a thread right now. So let's just come out to the very top and let's hit the create thread button. And first we're greeted with some tips. So let's read these tips. Tips getting your question answered faster. Number 1, search if your question has been asked before. This is really important. We don't want the instructor's time wasted by duplicate questions asked. So search first. It'll be faster for you too because you won't have to type in the question if someone has already asked your question. So let's say we want to ask a question about balloon payments. So let's close the thread here, the create thread. Let's come over here to search. We put this front and center everywhere. So you see there's a search box on each tab. Now, the browse search and the all search are the same. They search all the threads. following is only going to search the threads that you're following. So if I type balloon here, there's no results because I'm only following the one thread and it doesn't have balloon in it anywhere. But if I come over to browse and I search for balloon, we'll see a list of questions that someone else has asked about balloon. So we would just click through these and see if these were the questions that we were asking. Let's pretend like none of these are the question that we're asking though. So let's just close here and let's go to create thread. And so we've searched. Let's see what else it says. It says limit your post to one specific question. So I don't want to say, here's some questions that I have, and this is about a balloon payment, and this is about a drop payment, and then this is about the fission method, and this is about something else. No, limit each thread to one specific question. Be as concise as possible. You don't want to write a 5-paragraph essay about your question. It's just going to be much harder for your instructor to respond in a reasonable amount of time. The next one is a big one. It says only ask questions relevant to passing the exam. Unfortunately, we don't have time to answer questions that don't help you pass the exam. There's just a lot of students and a few instructors. So if you ask questions that we don't deem are going to help you pass the exam, then we're just going to have to regretfully say that we don't have time to answer those questions. The last one says be reasonable in the number of questions you ask. Don't ask 10 questions in one day. There's no way that we're going to have time to answer all those questions if you're asking that many questions in a single day. So now let's actually write our question. But before we see this big green thing, it says select a lesson. So I need to say where this particular question goes. So I'm going to select a lesson. And I know that this is on drop payments, which is on amortization schedules, and it's drop payment. So I have that selected. By the way, if you're already browsing in a specific lesson, so if we were on D1 and we were already in this section right here and we click the plus button, then that will be selected by default. Which probably you will be there because most likely when you're going to ask a question, it's because you're watching a video. So like, let's say you're watching the video D1.3 on drop payments. You get to the end of the video and you have a question. You can just click this discuss on forum and it's going to take you to D1.3. And you can browse these questions and see if your question has been asked before. You can also search for the specific terms, hopefully drilling in on a previously asked. And if not, then you hit the plus button and you'll see that that lesson is already selected. Now, of course, you can click here and change it if it's a different part, if it's D1.2. But in this case, ours is D1.3 drop payments. And we're going to say, I'm just going to be very general about this. I'm just going to call this balloon payment question. Try to make this title as descriptive as you can. So when other students are searching for questions, it will help them. And now we get to enter a question. And notice that it supports Markdown. So we can do things like a bulleted list. And so this is item 2. We can do things like a header. So if we do hashtag, this is a header. We can enter in, if I scroll down, we're getting a preview here. And the syntax for our Markdown is, we put a link to it right here. You just click this and it'll give you a Markdown guide to all the basic ways to write Markdown. You can add links, you can add images, you can add math, so LaTex. So if you open a $ and you start typing like x equals fraction negative b plus or minus the, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over, I got to close the numerator, all over 2a, close the $, and there we get the math right there. So now when you submit, you'll be following this thread. So if I click submit and I go to my following threads, you can see my balloon payment question is right here. And now as an instructor, I'm going up to my second monitor and I'm going to see that, oh, someone asked this question about balloon payments. And I'm going to say the answer is Y and hit submit. And of course, I'm on that particular thread and a new post has been made. So I'm saying, hey, click to reload to see that. But of course, I also receive a notification over here, balloon payment question, reply received. And you see that James W., the instructor, that's what this staff here means, that it's an instructor answering your question, has answered. And the answer is Y. And again, as we did before, we can archive that notification to keep our inbox nice and clean. So that's the basics of Discuss. It's, really simple. You have browsing, the questions you're following, all the questions. Click up here to create a new thread, and you can get to it from here. Or for things like flashcards, if you're browsing all cards, there's a Discuss on Forum button here, which again will take you to that particular lesson, and you can discuss that flashcard there. Or if you're on a multiple choice exam, so fellowship exams might not have this practice section, but if you're on a preliminary exam with multiple choice problems and you're working problems anyway, and you click check answer and you have this little Discuss on Forum, it will actually take you to that specific thread for that particular question. Well, I hope you're as excited about the new Discuss feature as I am. If you have any ideas for how to improve it, make sure you leave a comment down below, and we'll do our best to try to get that into a future version of TIA Study. Well, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.